Welcome to another edition of American Countdown here on Thursday, June the 4th, 2020. The question resolved tonight, who is behind the riots? We know of the participation of BLM, Black Lives Matter. I know from the Attorney General and from common sense and from knowledge of recent history, the role and involvement of Antifa and Antifa-allied groups. We know of the media's participation by exaggerating certain risks, building fake narratives, and hiding the degree of looting and burning and arson taking place. The question is whether it could be coordinated with the help of some one or ones more powerful even than those groups individually on their own. Where do those groups partially get their funding, their support, their subsidy, their ability to organize in the first instance? So that's a question we will explore tonight. First, there's a good article called Connoisseur of Chaos in the City Journal, which is published by the Manhattan Institute, which goes into the history of one George Soros. As it details, George Soros, a man who you probably don't know, was convicted of insider trading a long time ago. He's someone who managed to get fantastically wealthy without building anything, without making anything, without apparently selling anything, without employing very many people. And he appeared to come almost from scratch to that degree of billionaire wealth and then has used it to influence politics. What is less known about him is that he's been accused of insider trading on multiple contexts, including his backing of the alleged Ponzi scheme Herbalife. But he was actually convicted of it when a court actually took him to trial in France. He was found guilty and levied a fine of millions of dollars. But there's more to who George Soros is. There is sort of a Sorosian world order, as this article goes into detail, where Soros declared that the main obstacle to a stable and just world order, in his view, is the United States. He sees the United States and nationalism as his primary enemy, adversary to overcome and undo. Indeed, he sees a world of open borders and global governance. He's been open about this in his Open Societies Foundation that then funnels money to a wide range of grants and institutions, part of which ended up being leaked by a group of DC hackers who got into it and disclosed it to the world, disclosing the degree and the scope and the scale of it. Wikipedia also was, WikiLeaks was also involved in exposing George Soros when they exposed the DNC leaks involving John Podesta, because there were emails concerning the George Soros Institution in that regard as well. If you read his background, he grew up in Hungary and was there during Nazi Germany. His father believed in what's called Esperanto, the artificial language that he and other disciples around the world believed would eventually become the world's tongue. In other words, he believed there would be one language and one world. That's the ideology in which he was tutored when he was young. His next second major influence was when he was listed as the adopted grandson of a Nazi officer in Hungary during the Nazi era. And in that respect, he actually openly talked about what his role was and how he was not bashful, ashamed, or afraid of the fact that he helped participate and watched on as this adopted grandfather actually went about looting Jewish wealth in the country. Let's take a look at that video clip.
You're a Hungarian Jew who escaped the Holocaust by posing as a Christian.
Right.
And you watched lots of people get shipped off to the death camps.
Right. I was 14 years old. And I would say that that's when my character was made.
In what way?
That one should think ahead, one should understand and anticipate events, and one is threatened. It was a tremendous threat of evil. I mean, it was a very personal experience of evil.
My understanding is that you went out with this protector of yours who swore that you were his adopted godson.
Yes, yes.
Went out, in fact, and helped in the confiscation of property from the Jews.
That's right. Yes.
I mean, that sounds like an experience that would send lots of people to the psychiatric couch for many, many years. Was it difficult?
Not at all. Not at all. Maybe as a child you don't see the connection, but it created no no problem at all.
No feeling of guilt.
No.
For example, that I'm Jewish and here I am watching these people go, I could just as easily be there. I should be there. None of that.
Well, of course, I could be on the other side, or I could be the one from whom the thing is being taken away. But there was no sense that I shouldn't be there, because that was, well, actually, funny way, it's just like in markets, that if I weren't there, of course I wasn't doing it, but somebody else would be taking it away anyhow. In other words, whether I was there or not, I was only a spectator, the property was being taken away. So I had no role in taking away that property. So I had no sense of guilt.
Notice that when he talks about no sense of guilt, but also when he says that he was only a spectator, it's the one time in the interview that his eyes close, which can be a telltale sign of somebody that's lying, that he may have been more than just a spectator in facilitating the confiscation and looting of Jewish wealth during the Nazi era. There is this sort of hagiographic, mythical portion of George Soros' time during that era, in which if you get to the YouTube favored media publications or favored videos or other forms of media propaganda, you'll see they claim that they'll suggest that he changed his last name. His family changed their last name in order to escape the Holocaust. That's completely false. He was a co-complicit participant in activities that took place in the Holocaust. They had changed their name before then. The reason why they changed their name was to follow that Esperanto religious language belief, to change the name to Soros to mean to soar, as part of this idea that there would be one language, that there would be one world, and that this would govern all. That's where the mindset and mentality comes from, and it's one of the many propaganda components of George Soros' story that is hidden from the institutional and establishment press. In the same capacity, he described his following of a Viennese professor, Karl Popper, that where he got the idea for the Open Society and the name of its current foundation and political institutes that spread money around to those who will destabilize governments around the world. He described it as, quote, a place free of tribal affinities like religion, like nationalism, like traditional economics. This is someone who does not believe in traditional religion, sees it as a threat, doesn't believe in national identity, sees it as a threat, doesn't believe in traditional economic formulas, sees it too as a threat, though he has got fabulously rich while banking and betting on the crises that take place around the world. In that capacity, the article goes on to detail how he actually told people early on that the reason why he stayed, he was going to just make some money and retire and be a philosophy professor, but that stopped quickly because he decided he liked the money and his, quote, self-importance. As he himself puts it, to put it bluntly, I fancied myself as some kind of god. That's what George Soros himself said to others, and why he continued to do what he did and why he continues to operate as he does. Indeed, there are few, if you look at how he's actually made his money, as the article details, quote, there are only a few speculators who have so profited from disasters and crises like George Soros has. Indeed, often he can be seen as complicit in creating those crises, particularly in currencies and other aspects, by his influence in the markets. He believes in that. He believes that he can take certain actions that can cause the markets to react in a certain way to enrich himself at the expense of the public and at the expense of various governments. Indeed, as he described it during the 2008 financial crisis, where, again, he got fabulously wealthy after he had almost busted the Bank of England about 15 years before, famously, he said, quote, I'm having a very good crisis, he told the reporter. Once again, crisis for Soros is opportunity, opportunity for personal wealth, opportunity for pushing through his political objectives and agenda. Indeed, the leaked emails and papers from the Open Society that DC Leaks exposed back in 2015-16 detail about how he saw the Syrian refugee crisis as, quote, an opportunity to rethink migration's governance. Translation, use agitprop to flood Europe and the U.S. with refugees as a way to bring about the world that he wants to believe in. one where old borders and institutions are irrelevant, one in which American exceptionalism is no more. Indeed, he has long been an opponent of the state of Israel and has done everything possible to undermine its existence and its political support, including donating millions of dollars to various organizations that have ties to Palestinian terror operations. Further, the leaks also further exposed his willingness and readiness to shape media coverage, including, quote, let's select journalists from the 5 target countries and offer them long-stay reporting trips. And this was his involvement in the complicity of overthrowing the government of Ukraine. If you want to understand the way his mindset and mentality operates, this is someone who grew up in an era in which governments were overthrown with ease. And he has helped facilitate the overthrow of many of those governments throughout Eastern and Central Europe. Many of the color revolutions have had complicity of various government agencies as well, but they appear to be indigenous, organic, authentic revolutions of the street. But often they turn out to be orchestrated, organized, coordinated. That is why he is called the court, as this headline describes him, quote, the connoisseur of chaos. One could also call him the creator and coordinator of chaos. He does it by infiltrating media groups, using what's called NGOs, non-governmental organizations, and does so through funneling money in a wide range of means and mechanisms to basically infiltrate movements and instigate rebellion. And he's accustomed to seeing that work, letting that sink currencies, letting that destroy economies, letting that overthrow governments, as it has in many parts of Eastern and Central Europe when he was a kid, and as many parts of Eastern and Central Europe now with his own influence, creating that possibility and that outcome. Now, what is one of George Soros's favorite groups? Well, as this article details, Soros's favorite is Black Lives Matter. He has helped create it. He's helped fund it. He's helped push the fake narratives that surround it, to the degree that now we're even seeing the former Clinton campaign manager and other high-profile individuals, including members of Congress, call for literally defunding the police. Los Angeles is even talking about diverting large amounts of money from the police into groups as directed by Black Lives Matter. Imagine a world without the police. That's the world we're witnessing right now in many city streets across the country. It is a world of chaos, of violence, of disorganization. Indeed, the police is the sort of the thin blue line between criminality and chaos and an organized society rooted in its traditional institutions and American constitutional law. George Soros is someone that helped facilitate, promote, and propagate Black Lives Matter with his substantial funding in a wide range of directions. In the same context, he's not only funded various forms like illegal immigration organization and attacks on the Catholic Church. Well, dig deeper into Black Lives Matter's other strange affiliations and associations. And what you'll find is that Black Lives Matter often focuses obsessively on issues of illegal immigration, issues against the church, including promoting various issues related to more extremist aspects of gay and lesbian politics. Does that sound like a group rooted in actual Black lives that actually would be concerned with actual Black lives? Or is that a political template to create insurrection in the country along the lines of George Soros's agenda? Indeed, if you read and watch and go through what Black Lives Matter supports and subsidizes, what they patronize and propagate, what you will find is an organization that is almost strictly in line with George Soros's agenda, but not one that is aligned with the street, that is aligned with Black business, that is aligned with Black churches, that is aligned with the cornerstone and the foundation of Black civil rights in this country going on over more than a century. Maybe that's not a coincidence. Maybe that is not merely chance.